Hello and welcome to our show today. I'm really glad you can join us. Look, if you want to run a business, you want to do it successfully, you have to get your mindset right. I always say it's really about mind, body, and soul. If you don't have those things right as an entrepreneur, you don't take care of your body, you don't take care of your mind, you just can't perform. You just can't perform at the absolute level that is essential to real success. That's exactly what we're diving in today. Today, we're going to talk about how to rewire your thinking and transform your life and getting your mindset right. And with us today is David Taylor-Klaus. Now, he's a speaker, author, and leadership coach on a mission to unearth and unleash the personal mastery of entrepreneurs and senior executives. Now, since 2008, he has empowered his tribe to take an active, intentional, and dynamic role in their development and create the kind of life work rhythm, enabling them to build profitable businesses, raise thriving families, and live wildly fulfilling lives. Now, his best selling book, Mindset Mondays with DTK 52 Ways to Rewire Your Thinking and Transform Your Life, is available on Amazon worldwide. David, thanks for joining us today.
And thrilled to be here. Let's play.
I'm really excited you can be here. So there's a lot of things that you teach, I think, that are so valuable. And I don't think I've ever had anybody on here that teaches mindset. But, one of the things I saw was, Buddha once said that the mind is everything, and what we think we shall become. So that I thought that was a really interesting quote. I mean, what's it really the importance of having the right mindset as an entrepreneur?
Oh my God, that's all right. That's sort of like, want to jump up on the soapbox and start screaming because we, look, here's the bottom line. We are in ultimate control over the way we experience the world, right? There's a concept, Carl Jung gets credit for the quote. It's actually from the Talmud, but the idea that we, we do not see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. Well, that cool truth allows us to live into the fact that when we change our lens, we change the way we experience the world. Think, think of it through the lens of confirmation bias, right? We've been in a little bit of a political shitstorm for the last several years, right? I live in a runoff state. So, one of the things that's interesting is you decide who it is that you support, and you begin to see everything that happens as reinforcing that belief and that support. You see from one side or the other side, everything that anybody says, you can turn to support your belief. And we have found that political beliefs, just like religious beliefs, can be intractable. Well, that's a lens that we use, and it changes the way we experience the world. So if that's the case, and your experience is defined by your lens, you change your lens, you change your world. And mindset is the lens through which you see and interpret the world. That's why it's critical, particularly for entrepreneurs.
Now, your book, you really talk about this rewire. So, first of all, let's start there. What does rewire stand for?
I was challenged to write the book that I needed to read. And my challenge with so much of the learning in 30 years of being an entrepreneur was, God, fabulous, brilliant book, or a wonderful offsite, or this killer speaker. And then the phone would start ringing, the email would start flooding in, and I didn't have time to apply, let alone remember. You talk about the forgetting curve. It was sort of just a hockey stick drop. So a rewire is a mechanism for, it's a structured approach to integrate and reinforce new ways of thinking, being, or doing. It's an acronym that means, it stands for reflect, experiment, write, investigate, revise, and expand. And it's a way to take any learning that you're engaged in to break it down, use it, and then use it in other areas of your world so you actually have a chance to learn it. And what I've done in each chapter is readily digestible and immediately actionable to things that every entrepreneur needs. We don't need to have another dictionary sized tome for every concept, right? It has to be applicable. And then it has these 6 rewire prompts at the end of every chapter to help you take it out into your world and make it real in your world.
Hmm. So, how do we start using this framework to be able to get our mindset where it needs to be?
Yeah. Mm. So I've set this up so that you can go to rewireframework.com and download the 6-step guide that you can start using, and it walks you through. The reflect is a chance for you to take, let's say it's a new mindset you want to experiment with, right? Gives you time to reflect and breathe and experience what that mindset, how it's been showing up for you up until now, right? And then create an experiment that you can use. For instance, I've got a belief that this project is not possible. Well, what happens when you approach this project with the idea that the exact opposite is true, that this project can't fail or this project can launch within a month? I've got a new program that's launching March 1st, and it's easy for me to look at it and go, holy crap, how am I going to fill this thing? But when I look at it as this will be effortless to fill, taking that mindset, how can I experiment with that with the different groups that I'm part of? How can I experiment with that with the different conversations when I approach it from the belief that it will be effortless to fill this group, right? And then taking that experiment out, I'm then going to write down. And I don't mean type, I don't mean on a tablet. I mean pen to paper. It's different when you write. This model is not called the RETIRE framework, it's the REWIRE, because you're supposed to write. You process, you encode and decode differently. Write down what happened during that experiment. And then really investigate what came out of what I've just captured and written from those results. Revise the experiment, run it again, using that mindset in a different scenario. And the expand is the most important thing, because then you're taking that learning from this set of experiments and you're applying it to another area of your business or your life and seeing how you can use that learning elsewhere. Until we've investigated the learning, experimented with it again, and expanded it to another part of our world, the learning doesn't become as encoded, as real. This is just using neuroscience to get you to shift behavior.
Hmm. Are there new ways that we're finding with neurology and all the stuff that's happening with science where you think that there's newer ways that we're able to tap in and rewire the thinking, being, doing that we are?
Look, there are lots of new ways and there are new methodologies like cognitive behavior therapy. There are a whole number of things that we've learned over the last 30 years as we've grown to understand neuroplasticity, the fact that our brains do shift and change, and there is neurogenesis. We are creating new neurons in the brain. And more importantly, every second we have the opportunity to create more interconnections between the neurons in the brain. But we learning now the relevance of going back to the most basic way of relearning, which is changing the neural pathways that we're using. And to do a 30-second brain science piece, there's a layer of fat along the long stretch called the axon in a neuron. And the thicker that fat layer, the faster electricity runs across that neuron. Well, the reason habits are so hard to break is because you've got one neural pathway that's covered in this conductive myelin sheath. Your brain is going to want, if you've done it before, your brain's going to want to do it again. So the reason it takes 3 to 4 weeks to build a new habit is because you've got to let that one atrophy from stopping that behavior, and a new neural pathway create that fatty sheath and conductivity so on another neural pathway so that you can change your behavior and your thought process and your mindset. So what's most important in rewiring your thinking is not new learning and new techniques. It's same as before. New behaviors repeated frequently, high cadence and high intentionality will begin to develop new behaviors. That's where learning over and over again how much more relevant that is now in a very distracted world.
Now, is there a time frame it takes to really kind of create that rewire and get it to stick?
Oh God, it depends on whose research you like better. 21 days, 30 days. Oh my God. Psychologists will argue and behavioral scientists will argue forever about which is true. Who cares? Whether it's 21 days or 30 days, your goal is to start using these new behaviors with intention as frequently as possible for as long as possible to create a new habit. Once it becomes habituated, that's the goal. Your brain doesn't like to stop anything, Ty. You can't say, okay, I'm going to stop doing X, and think of our behaviors as entrenched as, say, a heroin addiction. We don't treat heroin addiction by saying, you stop. use replacement therapy. We have for decades. Replacement therapy, we give a heroin addict methadone because it replaces something that's bad for them with something far less bad. Well, we're trying to do the same thing with behaviors, particularly in mindset and activities that are brain based. And that is, look, replace a behavior that doesn't serve you or that you wish to stop with another behavior that serves you better. Replace mindsets that don't serve with mindsets that do serve. You will always succeed better by trying to replace something that doesn't serve with something that does than just trying to stop a behavior that doesn't serve. Always.
How powerful really is mindset? I mean, with what you see, like, what have you seen this shifting and changing of mindset, and the deployment of this rewire strategy? Like, what kind of results does it produce?
Oh my God. Um, so when I started my coaching practice, 2008 and 2009, I overlap with my last business. I was running a technology company with a partner for 14 years, and I sold to her in 2009 and went coaching full time. Um, Most coaches treat coaching as, I call them martyrpreneurs. And you see this outside of coaching too. Oh my God, this work is so important. How can I really charge money for it? Well, because if you don't, you have to go get an effing job, right? So, what was important to me when I began my coaching practice was to treat it like a business, to use the same principles as I did with my internet strategy and web development firm and the technology consulting firm before that, and in hospitality before that. I looked at my mindset was, I am in business. This business is designed to support the lifestyle I want to live. And so I hit six figures within the first 10 months when the average income for a coach, executive coach right now is 57,000 a year. And for a life coach is $33,000 a year because they're looking at it as coaching and I'm looking at this as a business. It changes my mindset when I look to do only the things that for which I am best suited and the only one in the company suited to do it. In other words, my zone of genius. And the mindset is that anything that's in my zone of excellence or outside of it goes to somebody else on my team. So it changes the way I take on tasks. It changes the way I manage my time, changes the profitability of my company. Mindset is everything. I'll give you a great example. You're still on mute. There's a there's a concept. Um, it's probably the worst lie an entrepreneur has ever heard. The phrase work-life balance. It's killing us. And we've been taught to wear our 70-hour work week like a badge of honor and try to jam our lives into all the cracks around what's left. And that's destructive. The reason you heard it say life work rhythm in my bio is because this has more entrepreneurs committing suicide than anything else. Work is a part of life, just like family, just like community, just like spirituality, just like whatever the things are that move you, your values. To put work first in that phrase is destructive. And it's a mindset base point that is killing us and killing our businesses. The idea is you create the life that you want, and you, as an entrepreneur, architect your business to support that life, right? You decide what's important, you create the conditions for success there, and your business is what funds it. That's an essential mindset that allows entrepreneurs to thrive rather than grind. Life rhythm is what we're seeking. Work life balance is killing us. So, yes, mindset is everything for the entrepreneur.
You One of the things you talk about in the book that I loved was how you said words create worlds. Can you expand on
Yeah,
that a little bit?
absolutely. Um, we are at the mercy of the simplest part of our brain, that primitive brain, right at the top of the brainstem. It's pretty stupid. There are five F's that the primitive brain focuses on: fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and make babies. That's all it really knows how to do. And so the idea that the language that we use comes from that. When I say, Ty, what's something you don't feel like you're very good at?
Oh, are you really asking me?
Oh, I'm really asking.
Yard work.
Right. Yard work. Okay, I'm with you.
And it's definitely because of a lack of practice, I can assure you.
Well, listen, my response would be, my version of it would be, I suck at yard work. But that makes it a binary statement, and that the primitive brain interprets as true. The middle brain, the emotional systems, will interpret that and add language to it in the prefrontal cortex, the modern brain, and that becomes a truth by which you operate. But when you say, up until now, I've really sucked at yard work, or I really sucked at gardening, or really sucked up until now, I have sucked at keeping things alive outside this house, that leaves the opening for change immediately. Up until now is a simple language twist that changes the mindset and opens up the brain for creating a different outcome. I suck at yard work is locked. It's a truth by which you operate. So even saying, I have not figured out strategic planning yet, or up until now, a weak point for me has been strategic planning. Those twists in language, those changes in language, open up the possibility for change. That's why words create worlds. Using closed end language about how you behave and how you be in the world will lock that behavior.
Hmm. What about, you talked about, I think, increasing cognitive flexibility and creating meaningful, lasting change, right? That's one of the things I think you referenced as well. So talk to me a little bit more about that.
Well, that's what the Rewire framework is that creating meaningful, lasting change. And what we've learned through the years through neuroscience is that sadly, only when the pain of the status quo outstrips the fear of what's on the other side of the change does change ever really happen. We are creatures of comfort. We would rather lean into the certainty of the status quo than the uncertainty of what happens after the change. So we will keep ourselves stuck. Right. And that's what again, the rewire is about, so that we can create change gradually instead of waiting for an inflection point or hitting bottom. But the increase in cognitive flexibility is incredibly important. We are living a lot longer than our bodies are, let's just say, than our brains are necessarily used to. As in the animals that we are, we're seeing so much more dementia and Alzheimer's. And one of the things that can stave that off is increasing cognitive flexibility. And whether that's learning another language or using new skills, whether it's Sudoku, crossword puzzles, again, immersing in another language, trying new ways of thinking, expanding your capacity in strategic thinking and immediate creativity. For entrepreneurs, one brilliant tool for that is buying the book called The Artist Way and starting those exercises in the morning, getting you used to connecting to your inherent creativity and the inner awareness and inner knowing. So we see a movement with thousands of entrepreneurs every year are taking on the artist way as a way to open up creativity in their lives and in their businesses. The more you can do to change the way you use your brain, the longer you will have brain health on your side as you age. I turned 50 a number of years ago and decided I'm referring to this stretch of my life as the back 50. If I'm going to live another 50 years, I want to do it with my mental faculties intact. Don't want to be trapped. So that means doing more things that keep my brain healthy so it can last 100 years.
Walk through Rewire if you don't mind. So you now do this with me again. You reflect, experiment,
Mhm.
wire,
Right.
investigate.
No, the W is right.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So because I want to make sure, because this sounds like a really good framework to be able to get my mindset right. So reflect, experiment, write, investigate, and then what's the R after that?
Revise. It's
Re-
taking that experiment, reworking it based on what happened during the writing and investigation, taking it back out into the world, and then taking expand is okay. When we were in school, okay, you're a little younger than I am. When I was in school, the way we went through math class every year, we would learn a concept in chapter one and play with it for that week. In chapter two, second week, we would go through a new concept in chapter two, which involved applying what we learned in chapter one. Then at the end of chapter 2, we were tested on chapter 1. It's the idea of learning material, using it, then applying it in a different scenario, then being tested on your mastery of it. That's what expand is taking advantage of. What you've learned in, for instance, leadership techniques at work. What happens when you apply those at home in parenting? Functionally, the only difference between leadership and parenting is one audience is shorter, right? So expanding it, using those skills in different arenas in your world helps you embed that learning. That's what expand is about.
Okay. So give me an idea of how this works in real world as an entrepreneur.
Sure.
So
Well,
like walk me through the stages of let's just, I don't know, you pick an example that we can kind of walk through and see what each one of these stages is through the process of rewiring.
well, I'll play with it here. One of the chapters in the book is what you think they think. It's playing with um, the comparison reflex that we all have. Being aware of what other people in the company or other leaders think about us or our behaviors or our actions, and comparing ourselves to others. It's playing off the quote from David Foster Wallace: "You'll become way less concerned with what other people think when you realize how sorry, you." This is one of those things that you're not going to edit out. You'll be way less concerned with what other people think of you when you realize how seldom they do. And one of the things we work out in Rewire, here are the 6 steps for this chapter, right? So the reflect is, what's the value of self-judgment and what are the challenges in it for you? And to really spend some time reflecting on that. The experiment for it is this week, notice how often you're judging yourself and others. In fact, keep a running daily tally, log it. It'll help you see how prevalent the internal judging mind is, right? And the writing is, what holds you back from self-acceptance? What always has? And look, I've tried to make it easy. Entrepreneurs will find a lot of excuses. I've got, next to the rewire prompts in the book, there's a journal page so that you have very few excuses. You just need a pen. Sit down and write, right? The investigate is, take some time to imagine what's possible when you release that self-judgment and free yourself from being concerned about the thoughts of others. Now, I get emails and nasty snarks about this one, that people constantly talking about how, no, I sat down and started this process and thinking that I don't judge other people, I'm not concerned with what they think about me. And as they went through these steps, by the time they got to investigate, they were sending me hate mail, because it if you do the work in here, it's giving them the chance to realize how much of their brain is being consumed by wondering what other people are thinking or judging themselves, and how much bloody energy that wastes. The revise is, the flip side of judgment is acceptance. Try an experiment. When you recognize that you're judging, pause, take a breath, see if you can accept the situation just as it is without changing anything. And then the expand step for this chapter is, redirecting judgment is a long game. It takes years of practice, so be patient, and be patient with yourself. Continue observing your thoughts and feelings. When you notice judgment creeping in, breathe and gently move yourself towards acceptance. So each chapter has 6 steps customized for that one. You get into a routine of seeing how this system works, then you have the ability to use it outside of the footprint of the book. Does
Now
that
you
give you,
have
Ty, a better handle on it?
Yeah, it helps a lot to kind of walk through that because, like you said, and I think you touched upon this earlier. I mean, we've got 76,000 generations of hunter gatherer right in our brain.
Yeah.
I mean, our brains are just kind of structured for that. Like we see threats nowadays, even things on TV, and we think like, our brains still act like, big animals coming to kill us. So,
Absolutely.
and I think everything, a lot of the stuff you touched on, Vaughn, is that's the stuff that's really controlling us now. It's stuff that doesn't even exist in our worlds. And I think it's so powerful. And then I like the structure because it helps you really create the new habits. And Charles Drueg, I think is I pronounce his name right, has The Power of Habit, that book. I don't know if you ever read it, but it's fantastic because it touched upon the same point that you said. And this is what I said. It changed my life because exactly what you're talking about, which is you can't just remove the action. Like there's a
No.
pattern to a habit. And if
Yeah.
you don't, if you need to replace the action with something else. Otherwise, that trigger is still going to occur and your brain's going to be like, okay, I want the action. And then if you don't replace it with something positive, then you're just fighting yourself. And as willpower drains, it becomes harder and harder. So is that kind of what you found, is that you really have to replace that action part of the process with something healthy? If you don't, then it just strains your willpower trying to fight and not have the action when that trigger occurs.
Always. And you really spoke to the core of it. We're fighting our very wiring. Our brain doesn't differentiate between the threat of a saber-toothed tiger over that hill or a competitor whose product released 10 weeks before your new product launch. We see both of them our body responds to both of those threats as existential threats. That's our reaction. And here's a cool thing I've learned from the 12-step community. My friend taught me the idea that we're not responsible for our first thought. Dude, that's animalistic. That's a reaction. We are, however, responsible for our second thought. Huge amount of permission there, because your body is going to respond to, holy crap, that company just released the product that's in our category. You're going to see that as a threat. Your initial reaction is going to be fight, flight, freeze, or freak out, right? But you get to choose your second thought, and that is fabulous. What do we learn? What does it give us the opportunity to pivot? How do we differentiate? What's the strategic advantage? What's the situational advantage? You get to investigate it differently. That's intention as opposed to animalistic reaction. So yes, Ty, you're exactly right. Take responsibility for that second thought and make it a response, not an animal reaction. You're
Tell me
not going
about,
to get eaten by a tiger
which nobody wants to get eaten by a tiger.
unless you're Tiger King.
Tell me about Mindset Monday.
Ah, Mindset Mondays was an accidental success. I didn't. First of all, I never planned on writing this book. I wanted to get more facile speaking to my point of view through the lens of my point of view to any topic, live and off the cuff. Now, all of my business cards have leadership or mindset quotes on them. There are 50 different quotes across my business cards. And so when I talked to this marketing person, this guru I've been using since the late 90s, she said, great, grab one of your cards, flip on a live stream and talk for 10 to 15 minutes, just riff. Well, I started doing that on Groundhog Day 2018. I was determined that by that next Groundhog Day, my life would look completely different. Um, and honestly, it had, because here's what happened. I flip on that camera and I talk for 10 to 15 minutes, and there's feedback and interaction with the audience on the live stream through Facebook and YouTube, and we're commenting back and forth, and their comments change the arc of the conversation, and it becomes a fabulous conversation about these topics. And all of a sudden, audience started showing up by the second or third broadcast, and it spawned a private Facebook group where these folks are interacting in between broadcasts, and I'm starting to see quotes from these things showing up in other people's books 3 years later. So it's fascinating. It's giving people a safe playground on Monday mornings, even late Monday nights in the Pacific Rim, to change their thinking, to open up new ideas and new ways of thinking. Hell, I'm getting quotes from members of the community that I'm using in future episodes. So it's really become this self-sustaining engine of learning sandbox.
Where can everybody go that's learning or that's listening and watching today to be able to learn more?
Thank you. Look, rewireframework.com. Go download the Rewire framework and start playing with it. Yes, it's designed for the book. Yes, the way the one sheet is built, you can continue to play with it on your own even before you get the book. Mindset Mondays, you can find all the past episodes at mindsetmondays.tv. You can also look for Mindset Mondays with DTK on YouTube or Facebook. It's 3 years of social media, good, it's out there. And from there, you'll be able to find information out about me and the coaching that I do and the work that I do with entrepreneurs.
Awesome. David, again, thanks for coming on with us today.
Yeah, Ty, thanks for opening up the sandbox.
So listen, if you're, listening, watching, obviously you're trying to build a successful business. And the key to that really is mindset. If you get your mindset right and you start putting your mind on the things you can accomplish, and what it's astonishing what you do. And I'm thinking of so many things because David talked about so many different points. But, one of the lessons I learned from one of my mentors is it's one of the best questions I've ever learned, which is, when you go through life, instead of saying that you can't do something, and I use this with my kids all the time, well, what would have to happen for you to be able to, and my son will say that, where he'll say, hey, I can't do this. I say, well, what would have to change? What would have to happen for you to be able to do that? And it's just, this is the kind of stuff that David talks about. It's just a switch in mindset. And if you do that and just look at this exercise, it's just a sample of the kind of stuff that David teaches with when he talks about rewire. It just changes the whole way you think. It just rewires your brain to go, well, this would have to happen for that to be accomplished. Well, all of a sudden you're solving the problem. You just went from a problem you said yourself can't even be solved to something that you're actually solving yourself. That is the power of really rewiring your brain and coming in and getting your mindset right and start getting yourself fixed on what you can do, and not letting all those prior programming from the time we're infants. Now, the science shows, and all these generations before us and all these things that are programmed in our brain control our decisions, and put us on the wrong path. So there's so many things. I mean, we just scratched the surface. We really didn't get into the depths of the framework and everything you could do to apply this in your life. So there's a few things you want to do right now. First of all, go to rewireframework.com. Rewireframework.com. That's the most important step to take, because that will give you the basic framework that you need to start diving in and getting your mindset right. Also, make sure that you visit mindsetmondays.tv. Mindsetmondays.tv. This is powerful. It's 10, 15 minutes, that he's on there. And what he comes up with is really even one of these sessions that he does that you'll see, it's just life-changing. It's really groundbreaking stuff that helps you get your mindset right. And if your mindset's right, if you only have that one thing right, it's astonishing what you can accomplish in business, 7, 8, 9 figures and above. So make sure you go to rewireframework.com. That's rewireframework.com, and mindsetmondays.tv to start getting your mindset in the right place so you can grow the business and have the life that you've always wanted to have. Rewireframework.com and Mindset Mondays.tv. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.